Just north of the car ferry terminal at Port aux Basques, Newfoundland, the mountains rise sharply and follow the western coastline northward for 300 miles to the island's tip, just a score of miles from the Labrador mainland. This is a land of many memories for me, of climbing the hills to hunt ptarmigan, fishing the streams for trout and salmon, and the bays for giant bluefin tuna, of mornings on the quiet lakes and sunsets over the marshes in the years gone by. On this trip, I brought my family so that Joan and the boys could see the Newfoundland west coast, of which I'd talked so often. We drove through soft green valleys over the smooth Trans-Canada Highway where, on my earlier trips, there'd been no roads at all. Our first stop was in the Codroyd Valley, where, with the crowd that had gathered, we watched a local regatta. The long valley was lush in summer's greenery, with the Grand Codroy River meandering its way through the intervale between the hills. This is a farming community of long standing, unusual on a northern island where for centuries the mainspring of the economy was the sea. Our first turnoff from the Trans-Canada Highway was to reach one of the provincial parks that lie deep in the long range of mountains. The Provincial Park Service maintains 35 parks and public camping grounds where anyone, whether a hiker with a tent and bedroll or a family with a motorhome like ours, could find water, wood, and a campsite with a pleasant view. The woods and hills surrounded us, and the lake stretched away into the late afternoon mist, inviting us to swim or take our boat and travel the 6-mile length of its smooth waters. We felt at home, in a place where others like us had come to enjoy living, at least for a little while, in the quiet out of doors. We drove through lazy countryside beside the sea to the Port Peninsula, a low, green area that juts out into the Gulf of St. Lawrence and is almost entirely surrounded by it. We passed colorful cottages surrounded by fields of equally colorful wildflowers, houses that had seen their day, and the bright new homes that now replace them. Port is a homey place, much like the Codroy, where, over the years, the fishermen have not only taken their harvest of the cod and scallops that abound in the shallow sea nearby, but farmed the land as well. Again, we found a provincial park in which to spend the night. Here, our boys could join the other campers and some of the residents of the neighborhood to enjoy the scene or walk out on a very gently sloping beach that stretched the entire length of the bay. It was a great beach for youngsters to wade on and look for shells and other small creations of the sea. The water, it was calm, warm, and clear. The weekend crowds were absent, and Douglas and Stewart had a picnic, running wherever they pleased with miles of beach they could, for that day, call their own, to explore and to enjoy, away from all the noise and bustle of suburban living. Their cries of delight and the calls of the seabirds were the only sounds that broke the silence. They were happy there with these simple things, and Joan and I watched and were delighted with their pleasure. They found troves of treasure, collecting things to show each other, things to take home to show to their friends, and keep bright their memories of the park at Piccadilly Head. We paused at Corner Brook, a city of 25,000, situated at the head of the beautiful Bay of Islands. A modern industrial city built around the factories that manufacture cement and gypsum, as well as pulp, paper, and other wood products. This thriving community is thoroughly modern, a good place to live, with the best of school and hospital facilities and beautiful, well-tended homes. The facilities for modern living, with its cars and travel, have come to Newfoundland more recently than to the more populated sections of the continent. They are here to provide adequate tourist service, but as yet there are no crowds, and much of this great North Atlantic island is still as it was generations ago. Where the Trans-Canada Highway bends east to head for St. John's, the capital city, we continued north along the coast to Bon Bay, one of the most beautiful of all Newfoundland's deep, safe harbors. Here again, we launched our boat, which we brought with us more for our older boy's sake than for our own, for we'd have been happy and very much at home in one of the local fishermen's dories. For a while, the boys skimmed along smoothly, exploring the waters of the narrow, 14-mile-long bay. Then they slowed down to troll with a flashing spoon. Stewart, who was doing the fishing, soon got a strike and had his hands full fighting one of the many thousands of mackerel that come into the bay each summer. Douglas helped to land, tried to land the fish for him. They went back to trolling. And soon Stewart had hooked another fish. This was the first of many mackerel the boys caught, fish that are at their best fresh from the sea and quickly dressed for the frying pan. Leaving Bond Bay, we took a spur road through the bare, rugged mountains to Trout River, a small, isolated fishing village nestled in a cove by the sea. Trout River is a typical small fishing community, untouched as yet by the commercial tourist services. Here, in the small, semicircular cove in a mountainous shore, the fishermen find a place where they can moor their boats or drag them up on shore to keep them safe against the passing storms. Stewart was thrilled by the roar of the surf and the calls of the birds. While the local children watched, he walked at first and then sprinted along the beach, just beyond the reaching waves, with the unconscious exuberance of a small boy exploring the natural world on his own. This was Stewart's first experience with wind and waves that pounded on a hard sand beach. And in it, he found something to charm and excite him. On a day the fog came in, we stayed at home in our Winnebago, and the boys tied flies with which to fish for trout later on at some of the hundreds of streams we were crossing as we followed the coastline north. There were many side roads branching off from the main highway, and we followed some of them just to see where they'd take us. When we found a pond, Stewart went fishing and caught his first trout. A boy's first trout is a milestone, especially when it's taken on a bright red fly he has tied himself. He's slippery, hard to hold, and wow, he's off the hook. And look who's on it. Now Stewart knows how a trout feels. He didn't get away. That evening, Stewart had the joy of cooking and eating his very first trout. We fished dozens of lakes, each with its own particular beauty and all containing their share of trout. But the best fishing spot was one of my secrets. A fabulous trout hole at the head of a magnificent lake, nestling like a jewel in a setting of sheer cliffs and tumbling waterfalls. A lakehead that lay hidden away in the hills, far from the roads or readily traveled rivers. A spot few men had ever seen. To reach it, we made a long and arduous trip. 4 local guides teamed up to slide our boat across 3 miles of muskeg. Taking the boat up the rough and rocky brook that flowed out from the mountains would have been much more work than we encountered pulling it across the marsh. The sturdy guides did all of the work. We saw pitcher plants, Newfoundland's provincial flower, just one of the many unusual wildflowers that are unique to the northern marshes. We had the strange sensation that comes with walking over the muskeg, which is like treading, oops, on a foam mattress on which there is no solid footing. We proceeded slowly and steadily, with the distant mountains ever leading us on. By afternoon, we reached the lake, but it was much too rough for travel, so the guides went back, and we set about making a shelter where we could spread our sleeping bags and spend the night. With alder branches and iris leaves, we made a fairly waterproof, moderately windproof nest for the night to come. Throughout that afternoon and most of the night, the warm wind blew and the waves on the shore made music to sleep by. Next morning, with a lessened wind, Dougie and I, with one of the guides who had hiked in across the marsh again, made the trip into the canyon. Rock walls on both sides rise sharp and sheer in the long gorge through which we traveled. The place is known locally for the storms which center there, sweeping spray high in the air and lashing the shore with waves no small boat can survive. We beached the boat on the steep shores at the canyon's head, and Dougie could hardly wait to cast a lure for one of the big trout I'd been telling him about. Action was not long in coming. A strike that's missed. And then another. And finally, the trout is hooked. This was truly a trout fisherman's dream pool, a wild, lonely, beautiful place where fewer than a score of anglers had ever fished. A place to remember forever, as it is now, before the highways reach it and the sightseeing crowds begin their pilgrimages. Fortunately, this magnificent canyon and the lake are destined soon to become a national park, and hopefully, the trout will be specially protected, so they'll always be there to offer the wonderful thrill of catching and then carefully releasing them. Through fields of daisies, under mountains capped by clouds that hug them closely, through mist and rain showers that make Newfoundland the great evergreen island that it is, we continued to drive northward. We passed small villages that clung to the shore in the shelter of the hollows and the cliffs that rim the sea. We saw lobster traps piled high by the fishermen's cabins, waiting for another season to come round, and the hand winches that haul their boats up from the wave-swept beaches to the safety of the trees. We saw the wrecks of great ships on the shore, mute evidence of the heroism and the tragedy that is a part of the saga of the sea. For the boys, the endless miles of wild, free beaches were a constant source of delight. They became dedicated beachcombers and joined with other youngsters from the little villages to comb the shorelines for treasure. They found net floats made from both Portuguese cork and Russian aluminum. They found a sea-washed stone, broken open to expose a fossil shell that once held a prehistoric snail-like animal, one of the Earth's earliest living things. Always to our west, we had the waters of the Gulf of St. Lawrence to hear with pleasure as they whispered in with the rising tides and then withdrew. We were constantly aware of the sea, its moods, and its vagaries as we kept on traveling north. A friendly fisherman took us aboard his small old-time motorboat for a trip out to the Cobb grounds. We passed another wreck and heard the story of its grounding in the fog and wind a score of years ago, of the English steamer with its load of rice, of how all were saved, save one soul, the first to try to reach the shore, and how they waited for days till the storm abated. Then a local fisherman came by and organized a rescue. We traveled on, passing close to treacherous reefs that might catch a less knowledgeable boatman unawares in smoother water. We reached the fishing ground, and our new friend got out his fishing rig. A cod jigger, a heavy lure, let it sink to the bottom, and then began to jig. To make the lure dance in the water just above the seabed. Fascinated, Doug and Stuart watched the first cod come up and come aboard, the first of many. Later on, Doug tried his luck, and he, too, hooked a fish. Up from the depths came a good-sized cod that went into our oven and graced our table for the meal that night. Near the northern tip of Newfoundland, we reached a place of spreading green fields, a place called L'Anse Meadow. And it was here, at about the year 1000 A.D., that the Norwegians of the time of Eric the Red landed and set up a community. The relics of their settlement have been found and verified, and the site is now covered by buildings to protect the setting for the future. Inside the main building, the attendant showed us the course of the Norse migration 1,000 years ago, at the time when there were 4,000 Norwegians living in Greenland, less than 500 miles from the American continental shores. Long considered merely the site of an abandoned Indian village, these ruins were undetected until, in 1963, Dr. Helge Ingstad, the Norwegian archaeologist, came to visit them and found iron artifacts that scientific study proved to be of the time and type used by the Viking explorers. There were whalebone relics and old firestones among the many things that made this site fit the early Norse pattern of living. We could imagine how it must have been for children then to run across the brook, hear the same whisper of the water, smell the scent of the marshy meadows, and see the wildflowers and the fields that stretched away from bay to bay and showed their green again in the surrounding islands. Families from the nearby village were there to pick the wild cloudberries, just as the first Europeans to discover America must have picked them, gathering the riches of the land as well as the fish and whales of the seas to process and conserve them for their year-round food supply. The Norwegians called them cloudberries, soft, sweet tart berries that grow in profusion on the northern muskegs of the world. The Newfoundlanders called them bake apples and cherish them above all other berries for their winter store of preserves. Like olives and mushrooms, their first taste is unusual. And gradually, as one eats more, one learns to love them. The stream that had been the source of clean water for those Viking explorers still runs fresh and clean for today's ever-growing group of holiday visitors to Newfoundland who are searching more and more for simple living and finding there is a peace and solitude that is becoming ever more precious, ever more difficult to find.